I can begin. So we're continuing the topic of challah. And we learned the basic idea of challah, about taking how much do we take, how much flour do we need to have. And today we'll learn, Mr. Hashem, a few topics which sometimes we actually meet them. And I'll give you, that's the first topic that we'll learn today, something called mukaf, surrounded. We'll explain that. Some time ago, a friend of mine asked me a question. They made challah, and they live in a small settlement, so everyone there is family, and they feel friends with each other. So they made challah and gave it to the neighbors. They made challah for Shabbos. When I was a child, we used to have a neighbor that every Shabbos used to give us something small she made for Shabbat. That's some places it happens. I went today to the supermarket. There's two workers who've been there together for, I think, 18 years already. They've been working with each other. So one of the workers baked a cake, and she gave to her friend. She said to me, every time I make a cake, I also give a piece to my friend. So that's nice. Maybe next time we have to bring cake for the shir. Actually, I made today zucchini soup, and months ago I brought zucchini soup because we were learning about brachot and soup. And then someone said here that he doesn't like the zucchini soup. And in any case, the weather now is a bit too hot for a soup. So, okay, so she made challah and she gave it out to the neighbors. And then after she gave it to the neighbors, she realized she forgot to take challah. So what does she do? Okay, what does she do when she forgot to take challah? So bring us to a few questions. One is mukaf, and one is when do we take challah? How do we take challah from matzah, which is also a question, and that brings us to another topic, which that will be our second topic, or maybe our third topic for this evening, Be'ezrat Hashem. I got many cakes. We had the Kiddush, Baruch Hashem, and in the neighborhood, so it's a community shul, and different people brought cakes. Do we have to take challah from all of the cakes if they're together? So these are a few questions, Be'ezrat Hashem, we will discuss today. Okay, so that's challah is interesting. If I have flour, do I take challah from flour? No. Truma to mastrot. Even I take from the grain, right? Challah it's obligated only when it becomes a dough. Okay, so challah is obligated only when it becomes a dough. If I take challah from flour, I didn't do anything. It's just saying a few words. Okay, so challah, we have to take it when we have a dough. When you have a dough, the obligation continues until it's baked, and also that we will remember. Okay, so it's very interesting. If I take challah, make it into a dough, or I make a dough, and then I don't bake it, I just eat it like that. Why? I make cookie dough. When it's really one of the things which is very hard when you go to the States, not very hard, but terrorizing. You see ice cream with cookie dough. Not only you see ice cream with cookie dough, you go to Ben & Jerry's and they sell cookie dough as is. And who eats dough? Like, who eats dough? You don't eat dough. I think I never tasted cookie dough, at least not as is. Maybe sometimes if by mistake I had ice cream with cookie dough. Otherwise, I will not eat ice cream with cookie dough because dough needs to be baked, right? So do we take, if I make dough which isn't supposed to be baked, what do we do with it? Do we take challah or don't we take challah?
No, it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
You bake it?
No.
Oh,
I make cookie dough for an ice cream. Is it baked, by the way, cookie dough? Yeah, the cookie dough in ice. Okay. Now you're saying tell me it's baked after years I've been avoiding cookie dough because I was scared it's not baked. Okay. So if I take dough and just make it and want to leave it as a dough, that's the purpose of it. Leave it as a dough. We don't separate challah. There's something interesting in challah. We take challah when it is dough, but only if the dough is supposed to be baked. Let's even see something even further than that. Says the Shulchan Aruch in Shin Kaftet in Yoredia. Someone makes dough, and his plan is to dry it in the sun. Dry it in the sun. I think pasta. I think some of the pasta is made like that, right? I'm not sure. It is exempt, it's patur from challah. You don't take challah if you aren't planning or aren't going to bake it. Okay, so cookie dough, you don't take challah. Bagels are boiled for a short time and then they're baked. Yeah, so the bagels are baked. Sufganiyot, that's a big question. Okay, Sufganiyot. We do have a big question about Sufganiyot, and that's a question about Sufganiyot. Also, what bracha to say in Sufganiyot. Okay, but that we will leave. I'm not sure if we'll get today to Sufganiyot. So anyway, it has to be baked. So it's something interesting. We start taking the challah when it is dough, and we can continue also after it's baked. And we can also take challah after it's baked. If I forgot to take challah, and I realized only after it's baked, so I can take all the challahs together and take challah after it's baked. Okay. In matzah, actually, that's exactly what they do while making matzah. If you look at the boxes you bought for Pesach, I'm not sure if you still have them, it said on them, we made the maximum amount of dough or flour we had was 1.1 kilos, or 1 kilo of flour at a time. What's the reason for that? Easier to mix. Yeah, it's a handmade masa. You want to be able to mix it up well. So if you have 2 kilos, it's very hard to mix it in 18 minutes. Yeah, we have machines. So that's matzah. So how do we separate challah from matzah? Have you ever baked matzah? Yeah. So do you remember how they baked the challah? How they take the challah? How they take challah from the matzah? So after they finish baking all of the matzah, they take it on one table and connect it together, or make it being connected with covering it with something. So they cover it, all the matzahs together with something, and all of them now are considered as one, since they're on one table in one container, that they are covered. They're all considered as one, not dough, but one thing, and then they separate challah from that. So that's how they make matzah. The same if I made a small parts of dough, I made a kilo and a kilo and a kilo, and we'll get to it hopefully later today. If I connect them and put them in one container, so they're obligated in challah, separate challah. So that's for taking challah. Another thing we have, it needs to be mukaf. All the challah I take needs to be in front of me. Some say it needs to be in one room. Some say it needs to be in, oh, now we have the air conditioner? No. Some say it needs to be in one room. Some say it needs to be in one container. But says the Rambam, I'll just read the Rambam. I'll read the Rambam. The Rambam says you have to take challah mehamukaf. Okay, mehamukaf. אין תורמים תרומה, talking about תרומה גדולה, אני לא עושה בהתחלה, אלא מן המוקף. It needs to be in one place. We're talking about challah, but when we separate challah, it needs to be in one place, one room, one container. That's the Machlokes Rishonim. So now we come back to my friend who his wife made challah, and she gave it to her neighbors, and she forgot to separate challah. If we go by the mukaf, when you separate challah, all of the challah needs to be in front of you. What does she need to do now? Go to all the friends, forgot the challah, give it back to me, and then separate the challah, and then give it to them back again. Sometimes they feel very uncomfortable with that, okay? And sometimes it's not possible. Okay? Sometimes maybe a friend already left the house, maybe they left the house. Sometimes it's not possible to do it.
What if you don't realize until Shabbat?
And they have a problem. They have to run and tell them, don't eat the challah. Okay, if they don't realize on Shabbat. בדיעבד, and some say even לכתחילה, but בדיעבד, if we separate challah שלא מן המוקף, when it's not in front of me, it's fine. So the best thing would have been to go to all the neighbors and tell them, please give me back all of the challah, I need to separate. But if you can't do it, so obviously the best thing will be just separate challah now for all of the challah that you already baked. Okay, so that's a question for that. We're starting to go to another question, which that could be actually quite common. That could be quite common. And I think I see it almost every time women bake challah. They have the matzah, the challah baking, you know, they have all the events, and they have challah baking. I think we as men, we don't have all the event. I did in the base ones, I did challah baking. And someone asked me, well, also men can take challah? I said, well, yeah, of course men can take challah. But when women do it, especially if it's more influenced by hidabrut or someone Sephardi or Kabbalistic, there'll be all those prayers around it, and it's the whole ceremony of taking challah, which halachically is just take the challah, say the bracha, and that's it. But there'll be a whole ceremony around it. Okay, so that's So many times women come together and take different challah, and they take challah together. And the question is, can you do it? That comes to another din, another halacha.
When you say take it together,
Yeah.
each.
So that's a question. There's a few women come. They have the event in shul. Hafrashat Challah, the Rebbetzin, and they come together and each they take separate challah. Can one separate challah? Can each one of the women separate challah? What can you do? Maybe no one can separate challah. Okay, we'll get to it. So let's say I have two doughs. I have two doughs. Each one of them has 1 kilo and 100 grams. 1 kilo and 100 grams is exempt from challah. It's patur from challah. And I bake them because it's easier for me to knead. Have you ever kneaded bread? Yeah. Well, if you have large quantities, it's sometimes hard to knead it. It's many times easier to knead small quantities of bread, right? So you need each the woman or the man, whoever did the challah, he needed 1.1 kilos of challah, 2.5 pounds, if you go by the pounds, and he has now, if each dough on its own doesn't have the right amount, but if I place them together, it has the right amount. So if he actually puts them together in one container, okay, they actually are obligated in challah. As long as they're in two different containers, they're exempt from challah. But as soon as he puts them together, they are obligated in challah. Okay, so if I say you need a challah, you need another challah, you make matzah. You don't need 1 kilo of matzah, another kilo, and then you have 30 kilos. You put all of them together, they are obligated in challah. Okay, so that also you can also do it at home. The poskim, by the way, the Gemara even mentions that the person shouldn't try to escape from the challah. Don't make 1 kilo and 1 kilo. Put them, make it together. And if it's easier for you to make 1 kilo and 1 kilo, so make each dough on its own, and then put them together. So they'll be obligated in challah. When they're together, they should be in the same container and even touching each other. That's the best thing. Then you don't have any questions. Now, here comes the question: what happens if I'm making 2 kilos of challah of dough? Making 2 kilos of dough. 1 kilo is supposed to be for yeast cake. Other kilo is supposed to be for bread. Now let's assume, just for the example here, we are all Israelis. Why I'm saying why? How do Americans like the challah? Sweet, of course, sweet. When we came to Memphis in the first, we got the challah from the bakery, a great bakery, by the way. Okay, challah. We got the challah from the only Jewish bakery from Ricky's. It's a great bakery. She has great challah. But then the Israeli said, 1 second, is this challah or cake? What bracha do I say on it? I mean, it's for the American. What happened? So I'll answer it in one sentence. I think we learned it many months ago. There's a machloket of how much sugar you need to have inside. A lot of sugar. I think in our days, sweet challah, everyone will agree. Even Sfaradim, I think they will agree it's hamotzi. Everyone considers it as bread. No one looks at it as cake. That's obvious. I think, in my opinion. When you take it from you even have sometimes salmon or smoked salmon on the challah. It's bread. Okay, the fact it has a bit of our flavor, our taste. French toast for my grandchildren. It has a bit of honey in it, yeah. Because I don't add sugar to it, so and the challah itself is quite sticky. Yeah, it's still, I think it will be hamotzi. We won't go into it now. Even the challah, the rolls that you get in the airplane, or you buy in the shop, it says in that mezonot, I think it's hamotzi. Okay, I don't eat them. I think it's hamotzi. I don't eat them. And yeah, I think it's hamotzi. I think it's based on the Sephardi psak. When we say it's mezonot, it's based on the Sephardi psak, which was true for 100 years ago, but now even Sephardim view it as bread. So, but we won't go into it now. So let's say in any case, I'm making pizza dough. Okay, I'm making pizza dough, 1 kilo of pizza dough, 1 kilo of yeast dough or yeast cake. Okay, and obviously I do not want both those to mix up with each other. I just don't taste. I want the pizza dough to be I don't know, more savory, and the other dough to be sweet. They don't connect to each other, right? In that case, what? And they don't connect. I don't want them to connect to each other, and therefore, even if they touch each other, we do not separate challah from them. Okay, so it's an important halacha. If we have two pieces of dough which we don't want them to connect to each other, to combine with each other, they actually don't connect with each other, and we don't separate challah from them if each one has less of the amount. And that thing could actually be a very question which we find very common question. We gave an example last week. Let's say, Baruch Hashem, we have a simcha, and you have a kiddush, and the community helps you with the kiddush. So you get cakes. Let's say you get many yeast cakes, and let's say also you get many regular cakes. Many regular cakes, we didn't touch it, but if you make a large quantity of regular cake, so you should take challah from it, maybe without a bracha, but you should take challah from it. We'll get to it hopefully soon. Okay, but let's assume that from cakes, if you have large quantities of cakes, let's just assume for now, you take challah from it. Now, I think not.
Families brought different cakes.
Yeah. Oh, now if you make by yourself, let's say you make at home a cake yeast dough from 2.5 kilos of flour. Okay, so most of us, we sometimes make yeast dough from 2.5 kilos or 2-point-something kilos to make yeast dough. We made once, that was another question, we had once for Purim in the community, we baked, I think, 150 small cakes like that. And the question, so sometimes you make large quantities of cake. So then you take challah. But in a regular day, you will not take challah, so you would never think of taking challah from a cake, right? Because most of us don't make cake from 2 kilos of flour. And now we have a kiddush, and different families, or shalom zachar, or brit, or whatever it is, and different families brought cake. And you know each one of them wasn't taken, didn't have challah taken from it. And now all of them are brought together. They're placed in the main table in the kitchen, and they may be covered to prevent it from drying, from ants coming into it. And all of a sudden you have a question, do we have to separate challah from it? Or it was all kept in the fridge or in the freezer? What would you answer?
Well, if you would say yes, the question would be, do you make a bracha?
So, okay, so the bracha is another question. But let's say we even found a bracha.
Well, if you said no, I mean, then you would say, well, each one of these is an individual. If you say yes, because they're all combining together, under whose reshut is all of that?
You have the Baal Simcha. Yeah, no Baal Simcha. Okay, and it's your Baal Simcha. Everything comes to your house. You covered it, and does it join or no? What? So let's think. Let's think together. Do you want the doughs? Would you want the doughs to mix up with each other? You have a chocolate cake and you have a cinnamon roll and you have different kinds of cake. Usually you don't want them to mix with each other. Each one has different flavors inside it, right? One has cinnamon, one has cocoa, one has, I'm not sure, raisins or sultana. So each one is different. Therefore, they don't combine with each other. They don't join with each other. So if you have a simcha, someone asks, 1 second, what do you do with challah? So you can tell them, you can calm down. We don't need to separate challah from them because we don't want them to join with each other. Okay, and here we come to something which is even more common, as we said, women making challah together. Here, they make one dough. Let's say they make 5 kilos of flour. Is 5 kilos obligated in challah?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. But what do? Each woman gets her own piece of challah, of dough. She braids her own challah, right? She braids her own challah, and she takes it home to bake it at home. Or let's say even they bake it in the same place, but each one writes the name on it, right? So you braided your challah, that's my challah, I'm taking this challah home. So you separated the doughs, and while it's still dough, you said to yourself, I do not want the doughs to mix up with each other, right? I made my nice 3-braided challah, and my friend made it a nice 4-braid challah. On Shavuot, many times I make a 10-braid challah, 7 plus 3. So I don't want that challah to make some sense. I want to take this one home. This is mine. So it divides to different people. This is called in the terms of the halacha, isa ha'asuya lechalek. If you translate it to English, dough, which will be divided between different people while it's still dough, and can be continued to be divided. It will be baked in different places, different people, okay, different owners. It will be divided. Okay, so while it's still dough, isa, while it's still dough, ha'asuya lechalek, it will be divided between different people. This is exempt from challah. Okay, that's and many women don't know it. So you can have a whole ceremony of baking challah. They'll bring their rabbits and they'll sing the songs and pray and everything, and then each one will get half a kilo of bread or 1 kilo of bread. And they'll take challah, but they can't take challah from that. They can't take challah because we said the dough needs to be together from when it's dough until it's baked. It needs to be connected from when it's dough until it's baked. If I separate it and the plan is for it to be separated, you do not take challah from it. The same as I made cinnamon rolls and I made pizza dough. Let's say I made 2 kilos of dough. Okay, 2 kilos of dough. I made the same dough. I cut it to 2, took 1/2, added cinnamon, took the other half, added salt, and my plan is for it to be separated. I don't want it to touch each other. I don't want it to touch. I don't want it to mix with each other. So I don't want it to. So it's supposed to be separated. You don't take challah from that. What's the solution? What do you think will be the solution for women who have this evening, the event of Hafrashat Challah, and they want to take challah for bracha? So what's the solution you suggest to them?
Who would want to take the challah from the mixture? Take the challah.
So there's 2 options. One option is they take the challah, each one makes their own challah, and then they don't care who will take what. And if I take yours, you take mine. If you don't care who takes what, it still belongs to one. It's still one until it's baked. After it's baked, so I'll take this one, you take this one. So if you divide it after it's baked, it's fine. Okay, that could be one option. Another option could be, now the problem is that each one wants her own challah. I don't want to take yours, and I want mine, so I can bring it home and say, that's the challah I baked. So another option is to have at least one woman making enough dough from 2 to 1.6 kilos of flour. So have one of the woman, so she has enough dough, and when I bake challah with other people, and I have an event of challah baking, or me or my wife, so we'll always make sure that we bring enough challah dough for ourselves, made out of a bit more than 2 kilos of flour, so we can take challah for bracha, and that'll be Yotze. Okay, so that's very important. I think we learned that here in the past, but since people don't know it, we are repeating this halacha again. Okay, now to go into another question which we discussed a bit. Let's say, what is dough that is obligated in challah? Well, what's considered dough which is obligated in challah? So typically, what's the texture of a challah bread? The texture of dough, it's thick, right? Have you ever tried to pour challah dough? No, you can't pour it. So we have two definitions in the halacha: liquid dough and thick dough. Challah by definition is the typical challah by definition is thick dough that you plan to bake. Okay, thick dough that you plan to bake. So it has to be 2 things. We'll soon see what happens if you have only one of them. Thick dough you plan to bake, that is obligated in challah. Thin dough, okay, thin dough, liquid dough. We'll call it thin dough. Just in the halacha, it's called thin dough, but it's more of a liquid that you plan to cook. That is exempt from challah. You do not separate challah from thin dough or liquid dough that you plan to cook. I'll give you an example. If you make pancakes with a lot of oil, okay. If you don't have oil at all in the halach, it's called baking. Okay, if you just have a bit of oil just so it doesn't stick, that's called baking. But if you have pancake, it's a liquid dough. And let's say you like your pancakes swimming in oil or swimming in butter. Okay, so you pour it inside the butter and it cooks. So that is exempt from challah. Says the Shulchan Aruch. Thin dough, I'll just translate it while I read. That you baked or in an oven or in a pan. Okay, so it is obligated in challah. So if one makes, for example, pancakes or waffelbergi, okay, waffle, or let's see other examples. Maybe also pasta, homemade pasta. I think you bake it before you cook it, right? Homemade pasta, I think. I think you bake it first. No, homemade pasta is a thick dough. So if you make pancakes or a large quantity of cake, if you make it in the base, in the army base, they used to make large quantity of cake. It's thin dough, right? It's liquid dough, a cake, but you bake it. Okay, you bake it, and therefore you have to separate challah from it. So how do you, and with a bracha? So how do you do it? After you finish making all of the cakes, you have, let's say, a huge pile of cakes. You put all of them in the table, cover them with something, and separate challah with a bracha. Okay?
Bagels are boiled.
Bagels are boiled, but then they are baked. So that's called baked. Okay, bagels are boiled and then they're baked. Okay, so that's okay. That's about challah, which is baked. Here, I want to come to the question a second to Kugel Yerushalmi. Okay, Kugel Yerushalmi. Now, for most of us, it's not such a big question, but Kugel Yerushalmi. What is it made out of? Noodles. Okay, noodles are cooked first, right? In the factory, they'll maybe take challah from the noodles without a bracha because it's not really baked. So let's say that it might be considered as if it wasn't taken challah from it. So you make Kugel Yerushalmi, and you make a big pot of Kugel Yerushalmi. You have a kiddush, and you have your secret recipe that came from Hungary, which means it has black pepper inside, black pepper. And you make two huge pots of Kugel Yerushalmi. Do you separate challah from it now? That's also another question. What bracha do you say on Kugel Yerushalmi? Now, if you eat only a small amount, I mean, less than a meal, you'll be saying mezonot. If you eat a big amount, so Danny isn't here to tell us, don't eat a big amount, it's not healthy. He's right. Okay? So don't eat a big amount. But let's first start from separating challah. Okay, so maybe it's not a very common question. I think maybe none of us ever met the question of challah from Kugel Yerushalmi. But it was interesting halacha because we never thought about taking challah from Kugel Yerushalmi, and the answer is there's a machloket. Do we separate challah from Kugel Yerushalmi? Don't we separate challah from Kugel Yerushalmi? And therefore, if you make a large quantity of Kugel Yerushalmi, what should you do? Separate challah without a bracha. Okay, so if one makes a large quantity of Kugel Yerushalmi, you should separate challah without a bracha. I think this is the psak of Rav Eliashiv. That's all. Okay, so there's a machloket about it, but you should separate challah.
Same would go for pasta if you're making the
Oh, so pasta is cooked. Kugel Yerushalmi is baked. That's the difference between them. Okay, so pasta will never be. You never take challah from pasta because it's always cooked. But so you make a lasagna. So a lasagna, first you don't have enough. Usually, you don't have enough noodles of lasagna. Okay, usually, and lasagna, I didn't actually check in the poskim about lasagna, but I could see why people say lasagna is considered cooked and not baked because there's a lot of liquid in lasagna. Okay, compared. Wait, you don't cook them. The lasagna noodles are special ones. Yeah.
Put them in dry.
Yeah, the noodles are different. Okay, the lasagna noodles of today and 5 years ago, okay, are different noodles. But today, when you make lasagna, you have a lot of liquids in the lasagna. That's why I can see why poskim say it's considered as cooked and not baked because it cooks inside its own liquids. Not like Kugel Yerushalmi, which is you cook it and then it's baked. Okay, you don't add sauce to it and cheese and other liquidy things. So that's considered. So we talked about lasagna. We talked about Kugel Yerushalmi. We talked about separating challah. We talk about combining a few challahs together. And then we'll end here, we'll conclude here.
Thanks.
So I'm doing two then, next one.